Hey, let's go get it. This is Jason Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. We are live right here at the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios in Lubbock, Texas on this beautiful October 22nd, Tuesday, coming to you right here, getting ready to talk about health and wellness. If you missed the show last night, we took health to church, talked about revelation, blessings of revelation. And when someone gets a download of revelation and they just, it's like we've all had those moments where it's like just that I could just hear so and so just whispering in my ear, or man, I just had this reason. I thought I just really felt like I should grab the keys, or something. One of those moments that we just get, and sometimes they're really massive moments. So get those revelations and it's just a blessing for us. And so last night, that's what we talked about when we took health to church, and we brought it along, and we talked about uh, Dee Dee Palmer. So if you didn't get a chance to go back and listen to that, Dee Dee Palmer was the discoverer of chiropractic. So that was quite an interesting revelation that he got. He had this whole idea that there was just like this nervous system. There was an abundance of healing in the body, and it was all happening through the nervous system. So what a great thing that was. That at least it was for me, and a lot of you guys that get adjusted as well. So I thought we would piggyback off of that tonight. We would take that and just see if we could just move it forward a little bit and understand what he was talking about, and then what we're talking about in chiropractic, because I still think it's completely confused out there about what exactly is chiropractic and how does it fit into health, and what difference does it make from a health standpoint, and why do I need to get adjusted? What is adjustments anyway? What difference does it make? And so that's what the show is going to be about tonight. So I hope all that is something that you're ready for. And I thought we would. It's football season. I got a whiteboard right here in front of me. I always have a good time with this a little bit, and so I'm not trying to be silly with the show or anything, but we're going to build off the building blocks of things, right? And my history is in football. I started, you guys know that. My dad was a high school football coach before we moved to New Mexico, started training racehorses, and so I spent my whole life in athletics, and I spent my whole life breaking down plays. And I was a quarterback, so I broke down defenses. And it was really cute the other night. We were watching the game. We were watching the Jets, and I don't know, whoever beat the Steelers. And my daughter, she's sitting there on the couch, and she's like, did you see that? The Jets ran a play. I mean, the Steelers ran a play, and they gained about 8 or 9 yards, 10 yards or something right on the goal line, almost scored a touchdown. And my daughter said, did you see that? And I said, what was that? She said, that guy moved that other guy over, went and tapped him on the hip and moved him over, got him out of the way. And then they ran the ball right where he was. I was so proud of her. I was like, look at that. You're paying attention to inside run plays. And so I thought it kind of worked out good last week when we did it. So I thought we'd do it again this week. Take just a second. I don't want to spend the whole time on it, but I just wanted to show you. Wanted to draw a thought. I wanted to draw it out on one side, and then I want to draw out the nervous system on the other side, and see if we could take those two things together and see if we can work them all out. So, you may have heard about like if you guys that are novice to football, maybe you haven't heard this, but you might want to, like, what does it mean? Well, we were talking about fitting on defense, but it's like, how many people are in the box? Have you ever heard that term? What is that? Like the box. Okay, I promise you, I'm going to tie football into your nervous system and health, and it's going to be an awesome show altogether. But let's start with, well, they got too many people in the box, right? Well, back in the old days, we used to have an offensive set that looked a little bit like this. It was a pro set, you guys on the radio will just enjoy the conversation that we're having right now. But let's just say we're in that. We got to put them in the shotgun because everybody's in the shotgun these days. And then the defense might be lined up something like they might be, they might have some guys in here. And then they might have their safeties back and then their corners like that. All right, so we got an offense and we got a defense. And when I'm the quarterback and I walk up to the line of scrimmage and I'm looking at all those guys, I know that I have, if I was to count the guys that I have to block, I've got one, two, three, four, 5, 6. And one of these guys, one of these running backs would be considered a blocker. So let's say that this guy's number 7 right there. So I got 7 blockers. Well, how many guys does the defense have that could stop the running play? Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we've got 7 blockers. They've got 7 defenders. We have an advantage because I can match up every one of my guys against every one of their guys, and then I can hand the ball to my running back, and then now I have an advantage. So that's what we call how many men are in the box right there. It's like, and these safeties are deep. These safeties are back here and they're deep. And so when I'm the quarterback and I walk up to the line of scrimmage and I look at that and I say, okay, where are those safeties? Because the very first thing I'm looking for is where is that free safety? And the free safety is the weak side safety, and then there's a strong safety. But I'm looking to see where are those guys. And this guy here would be considered the free safety. He's on the weak side. This guy here would be considered the strong safety. He's on the strong side. That's where we have 2 wide receivers. So my eyes are going to go to the free safety because I'm going to find out, okay, where is he going to stay? Is he going to stay back there? Are both of those safeties going to stay deep? And if they are, we have an advantage right here. And now we're going to run the ball because they can't stop us on the run unless they move somebody down. So what they're going to do is, because what they can, if they've got 2 safeties back there, they can double team our wide receivers. They can take a double team and they could double team these guys. And everybody else kind of drops up underneath. And that way, in the passing game, they have an advantage. But in the running game, we have an advantage. And so if we can run the ball on them, what they're going to do is they're going to take that safety and they're going to move that safety down. And now they've added that 8th guy to the box. So now they've got that 8th man, and I only have 7 blockers. So if I have 7 blockers and they have 8 defenders, they've outnumbered me, and I can't run the ball against them unless I'm just bigger and badder than they are. And then I can do whatever I want if that's the case right there. So then when that happens, that free safety's got to go to the middle. He's got to work himself to the middle, and now it's one-on-one out on the outside. It's their guy against my guy with the free safety in the middle. Now I have the advantage in the passing game. So as an offensive guy, I'm going to look and see, where do I have people in the box? And then, do I have numbers? Do I have better numbers than they have? And you can split all those people out, and you can spread everything out, and you're still going to do the same counting. You just might go from 8 people to 7 people in the box, or 6 people, or 5 people in the box. But when I'm on offense, I'm going to look at that, and I'm going to say, okay, do I have an advantage that way? And on defense, what's so funny when you talk to offensive and defensive coaches, they turn that upside down. Defensive guys will draw this entire thing the opposite way. And they'll put the defense on this side and the offense on that side. But we're all just trying to get an advantage, right? We're trying to take what we know and we're trying to get an advantage. And when I'm breaking down your nervous system, I'm doing exactly this same exact thing. I'm just trying to look and see, where we have an advantage. Where can we get an advantage? How can we get lined up that's going to give us the best opportunity to have an advantage? Is there something we could do in health and wellness? Is there something we could do in not just the structure, but also the function of what's happening so that we can get the biggest advantage possible? Because in football, they do that all the time. Because if the kids are equal, if my offensive players are just as good as your defensive players, then I've got to find another way to find an advantage. I've got to figure out a better way to take advantage of what, because it's like, man, this is going to be hard, and so I'm trying to win the game, right? I'm trying to win the game, so I'm gonna do that. And there's, I mean, that right there is been going on for over 100 years, however many long, 150 years. I don't know when the very first football game was played, but we've been trying to figure out numbers. We've been trying to figure out advantage. We've been trying to figure out what can I do to make my guys better than those guys. Well, I could get better guys, first of all, that would help. Then I could train them to be better. I could get them in the weight room, and I could start lifting weights, and we could start running in the off season, and then I could start feeding them better, and then I could start taking care of their sleep, and then I could start taking care of their brains, and then I could make sure we have the best doctors on staff and the best trainers on staff, and we have all of these things. We've got to make sure the kids go to class and get them tutors and all of that stuff. Like there's so much that goes into trying to get an advantage over the next guy, right? So what about health? What about if we're trying to do this same exact thing for health? What can we do to get an advantage from a health standpoint? Right? Is there anything we can do to get an advantage? Is there anything we could do to say, okay, look, I think that there's a way for me. I think there's a way for me to start getting an advantage over my health. And fundamentally, we got a download. We got a revelation. And what we got is this revelation. And I don't know if I don't think Dee Dee's the only person. Hippocrates said 2,000 years ago, look well to the spine for the cause of disease. Apparently that he said that. I don't know if anybody had a tape recorder around when he said it, but that was one of the quotes that's been attributed to Hippocrates, the father of medicine. He said, look well to the spine for the cause of the disease. People have been looking to the spine for the cause of disease for a long time. Like when your spine's not functioning properly, then your body's not functioning properly, but they didn't necessarily know why that was taking place. Like it just kind of had an idea, and it's kind of gone along from one person to the next. Well, Dee Dee came along, and he started talking about this subluxation thing, this afferent and efferent pathway, this communication that's going on. And I hear a lot of people talking, and it's so hard when you're doing a podcast like this because there's the audience is so large that you offend so many people by the way that if you talk too complicated, then you offend a group of people that don't understand what you're talking about. And then if you don't talk complicated enough, you offend the other group of people that think that you're dumbing it down too much, which it works. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I fit good in that category of making it simple enough to communicate what we're trying to do, right? So there are some things that I think as a non-professional healthcare professional, I still think there are some words that are worth understanding. It's just a normal person, just the everyday person that's just walking down the street, that just, if you're a mom, if you're a grandma, if you're a banker, if you're a school teacher, no matter what you are, if there's just a few words, I promise you never, if you're old enough, If you're old enough, you never heard of texting before. You never heard of an emoji before, right? There's a lot of things that we've learned recently in life that we've adapted to. Well, I think there's some things in health that we could learn that we also could adapt to. And one of them is afferent and efferent understanding. And really, all that means is we've got the brain and the spinal cord, we've got the cerebellum, we got the vertebrae. Down at the bottom, we've got a sacrum. You've got your right side, you've got your left side. That's your entire body right there, right? And we're going to always, like we do, we're going to split that brain on right side and left side, and top and bottom. So this understanding, just like when I draw this football play and I need to know how many guys are in the box and I need to know if I have an advantage in the run or the pass, I think it's just as important for me to understand afferent and efferent pathways. Pathways that travel from the body into the nervous system, into the brain. The pathway that's going from the body inward to the brain is called an afferent nerve. Because I had this conversation today. I had one of my patients ask me, okay, so she said, my daughter's in Colorado and they have a chiropractor, but that chiropractor has another doctor that's in the office. And when they go see that other doctor, if they go see their chiropractor, but he's not there or she's not there or whatever, then this other doctor's in the office and this other doctor is very gentle and she doesn't do the same type of adjustment and it doesn't feel like that the same things are happening. That's fair enough. And she said, then she looked at me and she said, now what exactly is happening? Like when you adjust my neck, what exactly is happening? And so we had this particular conversation right here. We had afferent and efferent pathways. So we had really simply efferent pathways. They go from the brain down to the body. You have the body sending information up to the brain, and then you have the brain sending information down to the body. Well, this same exact thing was explained, and that's one of the things I really love about chiropractic is that it's not different. It's the same thing. How did these guys really get this back in the day? But this comes from the Stevenson text that we looked at last night, the chiropractic textbook, R.W. Stevenson, and in 1948, right? And I read that paragraph last night about cycles. Therefore, if we get a grasp of it at all, we select the story that we want told, thus going from the general to the specific and confine ourselves to the explanation of that one thing. Well, he kind of goes down later in the chapter and he says the simple cycle. The simple cycle is the briefest story from cause to effect and from effect to cause. It names 6 important processes: efferently, creation, transmission, expression. That is basically the efferent pathway. Creation, which is creation of the nerve impulse. It's the creation of the nerve impulse, transmission of the nerve impulse, and then expression of the body. That's the efferent pathway. That's what we're getting from the brain that's firing down to the body. And what you're like, Jason, what do you mean by that? Okay, what I mean by that is this. Patient comes in and says, Doc, my hips feel like they're off. Okay, what is she describing to me? When she says, I feel like my hips are off, what she's describing to me is expression. Her body, her brain, which is really cool if you could stick with it long enough to try to really start to understand it. But how does she know that? How do you know your hips are off? And you think, well, that's a stupid question. I can tell my hips are off, right? Like, how do you know that your hips are off? Because you're walking in a circle? Because you're walking sideways? Because you can't move your leg? Or do you feel it? Because if you feel it, it's in your brain. Don't forget that. You don't detect any feeling anywhere other than your brain. That's where you feel it. You may think you feel it in your hip, but that's your map of your brain that's detecting that. All you're getting from your hip is you're getting transmission back from the afferent pathway, which is afferently, it's impression, transmission, and interpretation. Impression. The receptors in the hip are detecting movement, pressure, touch, vibration. They're detecting chemical changes. They're sending a signal now into the brain, and now the brain is interpretation. Let me do it in green so that we understand that's the afferent pathway. Your brain is interpreting what's going on. Your brain is receiving transmission from a body part that's receiving the transmission into the brain, and the brain is now interpreting what's going on. And this is it's kind of like a safety pin cycle. If you really broke it down and you looked at it and we could draw it, and we just drew like a big safety pin. And that right there is the communication pathway of your body to your brain and your brain to your body. That's the functional description of afferent and efferent pathway. That's the communication that's happening between your brain and your body. And that's going to affect everything in your body. It's going to affect your digestion, your reproduction, your immune system. It's going to affect your hormones. It's going to affect your heart rate and your heart function. It's going to affect your skin. It's going to affect your brain. It's going to affect your, like, all of it at the same time. The blood supply, the nerve supply, the hormonal supply, all of it's working. So I get a lot of times I'll get these sentences from people and they'll be like, Doc, do you think it's a nerve or do you think it's a muscle? I had a girl say that to me today. Something's wrong with my thumb, but I think it's just muscle. I could feel it. It's just like coming from my thumb and it's coming up my arm and I can kind of feel it at my elbow. But then she crossed the elbow and she put her on, she touched her bicep and she's kind of coming up her shoulder right there. And then, so it's like, oh, wow, what, you crossed it. Because at first, okay, maybe I've got some muscle function of the thumb that's attached at the elbow. But when she crossed the elbow and she started up in her arm, it's like, oh, maybe that's not necessarily just muscle, but it's never just muscle. What I really wanted to show you right there is it's never just muscle. It's always everything. It's not just nerve. It's not just blood supply, artery. It's not just muscle. It's not just bone. It's not just brain. The way that your body functions is it's always working together, all of it, all the time. That's the way your body functions. Now, what's going to be crucial is understanding this afferent system. This afferent system may or may not be detectable enough for you to communicate it. You may not, quote, feel it. Whoa. You may not feel this. It may be stiffness. It may be weakness. You could sometimes. What did I hear today? When I get up from a chair, and sometimes when I get up in the morning, that's what it was. When I get up in the morning, sometimes I put my foot on the ground, and it feels like my leg's about to go out from underneath me. Like I just feels like my leg's about to give out, and I'm not exactly sure what that is. Is that pain, or is that nerve, or is it bone, or is it muscle, or whatever? What is it, right? It's all those things together, but it doesn't necessarily hurt. It's just weak, right? So we got to take a break. But as soon as we get back from the break, we'll just continue to expand on this. And I got some stuff we can bring in together. So you guys stick around with us, and we'll be right back. Okay, hey, while we're on the break, I wanted to go over really quickly an MRI that I got today. And I've talked to the person, and I asked them if I could go over this just for a second. And they said yes. So they know that, and I'm not letting anybody's identity. Nope, we're keeping everything confidential. Yes, but just wanted you to see it right quick. Because this person was dealing with some neck pain and left neck pain, okay? So they did an MRI, and basically everything on the MRI came out. There's no pathology, there's no cancer, there's no indication of any sort of tumor, anything like that that's on the MRI. Everything is unremarkable, no pathological cervical lymph nodes, thyroid gland is normal in size, visual paraspinal sinuses are clear, everything there. No bony destruction is noted, but cervical spondylosis with mild C5, C6 and moderate C6, C7 disc space narrowing. Trace retrolisthesis means that the bone has moved back just a little at C5 and C6. Spinal canal and neuroforaminal stenosis at both levels. Yes. And the conversation I had with this person was, yes, cervical spondylosis just basically means that we're starting to lose disc height. That's what that means. Spondylosis means that we're losing the disc height. Okay, so it's the beginning stages of what we on this show call degeneration. Spinal degeneration. And why is that? Because we have a segment that's not moving properly. That's when a joint wears itself out, is when it's not moving properly. C5 and C6 and C6 and C7, but didn't say anything about C2 and C3, C3 and C4, C4 and C5. All those are fine. Why? Because they're moving properly. They have the right chemistry and the right movement. When they lose the right chemistry and the right movement, that's when they start to wear themselves out. So basically what's happening here is, hang on, let me get us back on the show. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. We're talking about the importance of spinal movement, really, and the importance of afferent and efferent understanding in your nervous system. And you're worth understanding it. You are bright enough, you're smart enough, you're talented enough, you are worthy of understanding those two words, afferent and efferent. And it just is communication from the brain to the body is the efferent, from the body to the brain is the afferent. On the break, I was just going over an MRI report I got today on a person with some neck pain, and they were wanting me to take a look at it. And everything was normal, except there's just a couple things between C5 and C6 and C6 and C7. And there was a little bit of, it says right here, neural foraminal stenosis. That just means that it's getting a little bit small where the nerves exit the spine, and or it was at both levels, spinal canal and neural foraminal stenosis at both levels. It's getting smaller. And I told the patient, I said, look, if we would have done an MRI on your neck 3 months ago, before you had any neck pain at all, I bet you it would say exactly the same thing. I don't believe that this finding is this structural finding is the cause of this person's neck pain. I don't think that those things. I mean, I don't know for sure, but that's my own clinical judgment. Is that this right here is not. Plus, I know the person, and I know the fitness level of the person, and so I don't think it's a structural issue. I think it's a functional issue. I think these bones are not moving properly. They're not firing properly. They're not firing the brain properly. The brain's not setting the body back in order properly. And that's the reason that the neck is hurting. So it fits with what we're talking about, because we're talking about afferent and efferent pathways and how the nervous system fires and why it's so important to make sure that your vertebrae are moving properly. We talk about movement all the time on the show, right? Get on your feet. Get on your feet and move. One of my guys told me yesterday, he said something about his son, and his son has these bouts of anxiety. He's really, really smart, but he has these bouts of anxiety. And I was like, move his feet. He's like, what does that mean? Like, move his feet. Keep moving his feet. The power supplied to the brain is not firing properly, and that's what's causing the anxiety. It's not a chemical imbalance. It's not a breakdown in his brain. It's a lack of proper function. And this report is basically saying the same exact thing. This report is saying that there's lack of function between C5 and C6 and C6 and C7 in the neck. The structure has started to change, but also there's two left. The indication, why did he go get the MRI? Because he has left neck pain. Okay? Then what did we find? We found some structural things on the MRI. And what is going to typically happen is that we're going to take these structural things and we're going to marry them to this neck pain, and we're going to say that's the cause. The cause of your neck pain is this spondylosis at C5 and C6 and moderate disc space narrowing with spinal canal and neuroforaminal stenosis at both levels. That's what we're going to say, because we went in with neck pain and we found some sort of structural issue. I don't think that's the case. And I'll tell you why I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case because I'd be willing to bet you, if I could get him adjusted, that his neck pain would go away. But by getting him adjusted, his cervical stenosis is not going to go away. So I'm not going to be able to change the structure. I'm not going to be able to change the cervical spondylosis or the neuroforaminal stenosis. I'm not going to be able to change that, but his pain's going to go away. And it's going to be like, wait a minute, what then how does it work? Because you've been told the same thing, right? We've talked about that lots of times. You've been told that it's because of the vertebrae are the old A word, the arthritis, right? You've been told this same exact thing. Well, you have arthritis in your spine, that's why your spine hurts. Nope. It's afferent and efferent pathways. It's I'm not saying that you can't have that. I'm not saying that you can't have degeneration that is the cause of your pain. I'm not saying that at all. But I can say that I've seen hundreds of not, if not thousands of cases where a degenerative spine has no pain at all. It's about function. And what does function mean? Function means afferent pathways into the brain are firing properly. Afferent pathways are firing properly. Here's an article. Here's an article that discusses that. If I can find it. Okay, innocuous mechanical stimulation of the neck and alterations in heart rate variability in healthy young adults. I think this is the one I was looking for. Yes, and I don't even know. AUTON Neuroscience, 2001, August 13th, and this comes from Budgell and Hirano. But that's where it came from. AUTON, autonomic, maybe nervous neuroscience. They're trying to see if getting someone an adjustment will change their heart rate variability or their cardiac function in some form or fashion. It is established that noxious physical and psychological stimulation affect autonomic and cardiovascular function in humans. Yes, if your neck is not moving properly, it can change your autonomic nervous system. It could change your heart rate. It could change your blood pressure. It could change your digestive function. It could change your fight or flight response, all that stuff. Okay? And also, innocuous mechanical stimulation of the neck via spinal manipulation is capable of eliciting changes in heart rate and blood pressure. See, if you have a subluxation and the subluxation is causing disruptive afferent information into the brain, the subluxation is causing abnormal signals to the brain, which means it's causing abnormal signals to each of the brain parts: the thalamus, the hypothalamus, the amygdala, the motor cortex, the cerebellum. It's all of the parts of the brain are now, all of it is getting abnormal afferent information. That's causing a problem. So when you address that problem, you can actually stop that. And so these guys went on and said something, and Dr. Murphy kind of disagreed. He said EEG showed that in the first 5 minutes following the experiment, that the real adjustment group had a significant reduction in heart rate as compared to the sham adjustment group, which I don't even know really what that. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. They say, quote, hence, attention is drawn to the role of low threshold mechanoreceptors in cervical spine and adjacent musculotendinous tissues. They're just saying that you don't need the cavitation in order to make a change. And we've discussed this on the show before. You don't have to have the cavitation to make a change, but you get a greater change when you do have the cavitation. Dr. Murphy said, he disagrees. I believe the other articles argue that cavitation process fires high threshold mechanoreceptors, resulting in inhibition of pain, inhibition of muscle tone, and inhibition of sympathetic nervous system. You're like, whoa, where did you just go with this whole show? I was with you, and then I just lost you right there, right? Okay, let me read it again. Other articles argue that cavitation, getting adjusted where you hear the pop, okay, getting adjusted where you hear the pop fires the afferent receptors in the joint, regardless of if it's on your spine or if it's in your elbow or if it's in your hand. It's firing this high threshold mechanoreceptor, meaning you can't just get to it with a very low amplitude, very low threshold adjustment. You gotta get some quickness and some power in there in order to fire that high threshold mechanoreceptor, which will result in inhibition of pain, muscle tone, and inhibition of the sympathetic nervous system. So what is actually happening, if we go back to our afferent and efferent pathway, what is actually happening right here is the abnormal movement and function of the joint is decreasing the afferent information into the brain. What we've got is something, I don't know why. There we go. What we've got is we've got a decrease in afferent input. Let's go back to our little, we've got a decrease in impression, transmission, and interpretation. We've got a difference in interpretation. We have a change in interpretation in the brain because we have lack of movement in our spine. And that is causing an increased amount of pain, an increase in muscle tone, and an increase in sympathetic nervous system function, the fight or flight response. So all three of those things are happening because we're not moving properly. But when we go get an MRI or we get an X-ray, the doctor describes to us the structure that's on the X-ray, but the doctor doesn't describe to us the function of what's going on there. They just describe to us on an MRI, you've got a torn ligament in your shoulder, you have degeneration in your knee, you've got, or they'll call it arthritis, right? You've got whatever reason in your spine, you have a bulging disc in your spine, you have stenosis in your spine, which means decreased diameter of opening. That's what stenosis is. You have all of these things that are structurally explained. Because what is an MRI other than a picture? An MRI is a picture. And a picture is something that I can describe, just like I can describe to you how many men are in the box when I look at a football play. I can't tell you how that play is going to actually work. You know, there are times when the box is loaded and we still run the ball. Because if our guys are better than their guys, or if we could get an advantage inside the box somehow, we will still run the ball regardless of whether they have more people in there than we can block or not. Functionally, we still have a chance, even though structurally it says that we might have some challenge. Same thing over here on this other side. Structurally, we may have some challenge, but functionally, we still have a chance. And that means when you get adjusted, when we get adjusted, and especially when you get adjusted and you hear your spine pop, that popping sound is that firing of that high threshold mechanoreceptor that's firing afferent information into the brain, which is allowing the brain to interpret the joint properly, then create a new impulse, transmit that impulse back to the area of the body, and change the expression of that area of the body. Does that make sense? We have an expression we don't like. We have an expression that we don't like. What do you don't like? What do you not like about your health? Is there anything about your health that you particularly don't like? You might answer that for yourself. Right? Is there something about your health you don't like? You don't like your weight? Okay. You want to change the expression of your weight. What is the Why is your body expressing too much weight? Well, because you're not moving enough or you're feeding it too much. We'll cover about 90% of us, probably 95% of us. There's about 5 to 10% of us that probably um, we have some sort of hormonal issue that's going on. Okay, and 60% of statistics are made up on the spot. So don't ever forget that. I didn't. Yeah. So I'm just saying that. Look, there's something you don't like about it. You don't like the way your shoulder feels. You can change the expression of your shoulder by changing the afferent input into the brain from your body in some form or fashion. And that's what your chiropractor really studies to do. It's like that's where it all just maps back together. And it says, okay, my right shoulder is not functioning properly. Why is my right shoulder not functioning properly? Because my brain's not functioning properly, which is a result of the lack of input, the proper afferent pathway into my brain, which is causing my shoulder to hurt. So what do we do about that? We adjust the spine. We actually adjust the shoulder. We adjust the elbow in my office. We adjust the wrist. Now, these guys, these old timers, they didn't like that at all. They didn't like you getting away from the spine at all. They didn't want you to mess around. They said, stay on the spine. Spinal adjustment, subluxation, spinal adjustment. Don't be getting out there on the periphery and messing all that stuff up. I'm a new school, old school guy. I'm more of the idea that, hey, look, I might actually adjust the shoulder. I might adjust the elbow. I might adjust the wrist. I got my wrist adjusted today when I went and got adjusted by my chiropractor. Why? Because if I have abnormal wrist function, regardless, did I have wrist pain? No, didn't have any problems with my wrist. I didn't go in there and say, Doc, man, my wrists are hurting. He just adjusted my wrist. And so why? Maybe we were talking football. He wanted to talk longer, so he just found another joint to adjust. I don't know. Maybe he had innate intelligence that said, I should check his wrist today. He's a chiropractor. He works with his hands all the time. I don't know what exactly caused him to do that, but he adjusts my wrist. Did I have any problems with that? No. Did it help? Yes. It made sure that I had afferent information from my wrist into my brain. I want all of the 1 trillion, the 3 trillion bits of information per second that can be going from my body into my brain. See, I talk about all of this other stuff, this nutrition that we talk about, the fish oil, the vitamin D, all of those other things, because they're supportive of brain function. Walking, getting your eyes up, being social, all those things that we talk about on the show, like all of the conversations we've had about complex carbohydrates and proper proteins and getting good fats and making sure we're getting enough sleep and making sure we're getting enough exercise, and like a year and a month, 2 months now, almost, month and a half, a year and a month and a half that we've been doing this, 13 and a half months, been doing this show, and we've been talking about the same things over and over and over again. We're just talking about them different ways today. And today we put football in it, right? It's the same thing. But all of this stuff is, to me as a chiropractor, all of this stuff is what's supportive of what's happening in your nervous system. It's what's supportive of your spine and your brain, your spinal cord and your brain. That's why you're doing all of this. I had a conversation today about the girl with the thumb said, well, I was thinking about going and putting it in the cold tub, but I just didn't have time to do it. And I was very humble and I was very calm. And I was like, why would you do that? Why would you put it in a cold tub? And she's like, well, for the inflammation in my hand. And I was like, okay, how many times, have you guys heard that too? I used to hear it my whole life. Well, you need to ice your wrist. You need to ice your elbow. You should ice it down. Why? What does ice do to the nervous system? Slows it down. What does the healing? The nervous system. Why would you want to slow down the nervous system if the nervous system does the healing? That's difficult. That's one that trips us up because we don't understand that quite like we should. We don't really understand that it's the what? Well, I should knock the inflammation out of my wrist. Why is it getting inflamed? Why is your wrist inflamed? It's not functioning properly. It's got too many omega-6 fatty acids in there, right? It's not functioning properly and it's inflamed. Tie those two things together. Now, tie this together. It's not afferently firing properly and now it's inflamed. Map those two things together. Wait, what did you say? My wrist is not afferently firing properly. It's not firing properly into my brain. And since it's not firing, since the nervous system is not functioning right, nothing else is functioning right, and I've got inflammation in my wrist. How do I fix that? What would happen if you started with the idea that I need to make sure that my joint is firing my brain properly? Maybe my wrist and my brain aren't communicating with each other the way they're supposed to. And therefore, I have problems in my wrist. Does that make sense? You get that? You get that idea that if the wrist is not functioning properly, maybe it's because it's not communicating with the brain properly. Maybe we have disafferentation. That's the word. Disafferentation means it's the wrong signal. It's the wrong interpretation of the brain. The brain's like, what am I supposed to do with that? It's like it's not even talking to me. It's the wrong interpretation. And that happens all over our bodies. That happens all over our bodies. And that's where what we do in our office is give you an adjustment. That's part of almost every treatment that we do in the office. I've got a couple of people that come in and just walk on the treadmill because they, for whatever reason, most of them are older. Some of them have lots of spinal problems, and that's what they've chosen to do. And they walk on there's like 2 or 3 of them out of all of my patients that just come in and just do that. But everybody else comes to see me first. They come to see me to get adjusted. Then they go see Brooke to do their brain exercises. Then they go back and do their decompression. Then they go back and do their Alter G. Then they go do the whatever else we got, the neurofeedback. My neurofeedback people come get adjusted. They don't have to, but they do. They come get adjusted. Then they go do their neurofeedback. They go get adjusted. Then they go do their brain exercises. Then they go do their neurofeedback. But they come to me first to get adjusted. Why? Because we're not going to get anywhere if we don't get that afferent-efferent pathway working. If we don't get the body communicating with the brain and the brain communicating with the body, we're going to be spinning our wheels, and then we're going to be disappointed with the outcome. And that is very common, being disappointed with the outcome. It's the same exact thing of walking up there and not knowing where those safeties are. When I walk up to that line of scrimmage and I don't pay any attention to those safeties and I run the ball right into that 8-man front, I'm going to be disappointed with the outcome. And I'm going to be disappointed because I didn't take advantage of what was going on over there because I didn't pay attention to how the structure was functioning, or their structure was lined up, and then I tried to run right into it and it was wrong. The same thing happens. You search. How many of you have searched all over the world to try to figure out what the heck to do with your health in some form or fashion? And you never thought, and what we used to do is we're the last ones to get you. You go do shots, you go do physical therapy, you go do anti-inflammatory drugs, you go get a massage, you go do all this stuff, and then you finally show up in our office and you're like, hey, doc, do you think you can help me? Because I've tried everything else. And what maybe should be the case is that you start with the nervous system and then work your way around if it doesn't work itself out. That might actually be an alternative that you might enjoy by getting your nervous system. That's what we do. So if you are a patient in the office, that's what we're doing. We're trying to get afferent and efferent pathways firing properly so that your brain can interpret your body in space and time, and it can set your body to express itself properly. That's what we're trying to do. Input, output, adjust it, make it get to the point where it can, and then we support it with all of those other things like sleep and nutrition and exercise and social life and all of those other things. I know I was jumping around a little bit tonight, but maybe that made some sense to you, and maybe that might help you live a healthier life. So, thanks. I hope you guys have a great night. That's the end of the show. That's all the time we got for tonight. So, we'll be back tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. If I can help you, send me a message. If you'd like to send me a text, 806